Welcome back, I'm Tedward, welcome to Michigan, and welcome to the all-new Chevrolet Silverado EV RST First Edition. I'm so excited to finally be driving this electrified pickup truck. It has two motors, one in the front, one in the rear, four-wheel steering, 754 horsepower, 785 pound-feet of torque, but here is the number that matters. This truck has 440 miles of range. That's right, your range anxiety can subside because it's going to take a lot of work and a long day of driving to deplete this battery. It'll charge at 350 kilowatt charge speeds, which means it's going to be able to get you 100 miles on the range in 10 minutes of charging in the right conditions. And if you're plugged into your home with the right equipment from Chevrolet, this can power your house. So no more blackouts or power outages. Or if you're a camper and you're towing your big old camper, it'll tow 10,000 pounds. Well, you can run that camper off of this battery, provided you've got enough battery to get to where you need to go. So first, let's take a look around. The stance is fantastic. I think Chevy's design language has really fallen into a proper groove. It's starting to look really good. It rides on 24-inch wheels with 8 lugs. I think these are the biggest production wheels ever. It has 275 section tires and a 50 aspect ratio sidewall, which isn't terrible, but it is definitely pressurized because I think the factory specs are like 68 PSI and 62 PSI. Let's take a look in here and see if I'm right. 61 PSI in the front, 68 PSI in the rear. That's a lot of pressure, and that's not going to mask every imperfection in the road, but we do have, if you look through here, these big air shocks. There's air suspension in this. It can rise and lower depending on what you're looking to do, and it actually lowers to get you in and out of the vehicle. So you have an entry mode to make it easier for people, so you're not climbing up into your big truck. But I am curious to see how it absorbs the road. Now, just like Hummer EV, we get rear steering, but instead of 10 degrees, you get 7.5 degrees of rear steer. That makes this truck drive a lot smaller, especially in smaller environments. It's gonna allow you to make those tight turns. It's gonna allow you to get into those parking spaces without any problem. But I'll tell you what, this truck is anything but small. I wanna start in the rear because first, this door, don't let this camera angle deceive you. This is a very long and wide door. It feels like an extended wheelbase Range Rover. We get up through our step. We have tons of leg. Like, this is like a dream airplane legroom situation. That seat is in my position. I'm 5'9", so I'm not the tallest person, but even if I was like 6'2" or 6'3", there's no way this is coming anywhere near me. Nice flat floor because we don't have any drive line coming through, and pretty standard comfortable stuff. We've got cup holders for the rear guys here and in the doors, of course, and a beautiful glass roof. So you get this skylight. Now, because it doesn't have a sunroof, you don't lose any headroom. So lots of headroom for anyone of pretty much any size. Now, these can fold down because you can open up this glass and this to extend this. This is like a Chevy Avalanche where you can put stuff into the truck. So that bed is not limiting all of your space. You can actually bring things through here just like you would in an SUV. In the rear, you've got HVAC vents, 3-stage heated seats for the outboard passengers, and up front, a very stylish new cabin with the big old screen for your navigation and your dashboard. On the driver's side, we have our charge port. You do not get this on both sides of the truck, so you will have to plan a little bit accordingly. And I think that's just one thing in the infrastructure that still needs to be worked out, because if you are towing, because this will tow 10,000 pounds, you are going to need to be able to charge while you're towing. And I think a lot of charging stations are still not quite that suitable for it, but we'll get there. In the rear, we've got the multi-flex gates and all that fun stuff. So you're able to, put things in here and still block them off and tie them down as you'd like. Let's move our tonneau cover and take a look inside this bed. In the bed, this is where this becomes really special because you've got two sections with 120 volt with 2 outlets each. So there's 4 120s and then a 240. I mean, you can genuinely use this on a job site with pretty much any equipment you can throw at it, and it's gonna power it. But here's one of the big benefits of having an electrified pickup truck: a frunk. So Not only do you have a ton of space in the truck, in the bed, but you also get this nice flat entry load floor in order to put other additional things. So the numbers are wild, but I'm really curious how this thing behaves and drives on the road, because this is going to be your daily driver. And yes, now you don't have the range anxiety. It'll do the shopping, it'll do the towing, it'll even power your home, but it's between 8,500 and 9,000 pounds. So I'm curious to see how it behaves in a corner and under braking. Getting inside, nice big solid door. We've got a step here. You can use the steering wheel to help us inside because we do not have any grab handles on the A-pillar or the roof for the driver. Now, what you'll notice, there is no start stop button in this Silverado. You just hit the brake and we're started. And there we are. It's warning us that our tailgate is open, which I appreciate because I did in fact forget. So here is our giant infotainment screen, and this is becoming a little more commonplace in the Chevy world, but you can use certain hotkeys to get your maps or your home or your music, and it'll even allow you to put on one pedal driving and set that level off normal high very quickly. That's really important. Now, I'm putting it in drive to illustrate one thing that is a bit annoying, and that is the pedestrian warning sound. So I understand that sound may be playing when you're going 1 mile per hour, but this means that every time you're under 25 miles per hour, that is what you're gonna hear. In the center console with our deviated stitching, red and blue in the Silverado First Edition plaque, we can look in here. We've got cavernous space in here. You're not gonna have any trouble. You're gonna just fill that with receipts. And then we've got wireless charging here, 2 USB-C plugs there, and a little cigarette lighter guy in case you need to put your radar detector in, because this thing is fast. Our rear view mirror, of course, has a camera, very Chevrolet, we like that, but you can use it as a mirror as well. In our transmission controls, pull back and down for drive, pull back for neutral, and pull back and up for reverse. And this is where these cameras are fantastic. I think that one's actually goofy right now because I put the tailgate down, but GM's cameras, best in the game, man. I do really dig these. It makes life a lot easier when you're like backing up, going in tight spots, or off-roading. Push in for park. Let's kick it off with a launch control. So first we're gonna do my mode. We're gonna make sure that everything is in sport. Acceleration, motor sound does not matter, but that's fine because that is going to be changed when we hit this button, the Batman button. And now it has the full 754 horsepower and 785 pound-feet of torque, which should get us off the line 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. Let's see what that feels like in a Silverado pickup truck. We're also going to lower it to the entry mode because apparently that is the fastest way to get this truck away. We're lowered, we're in the right mode, we've got the Batman on, let's hit it. See how these brakes feel. All right, so that's almost 9,000 pounds getting brought down from about 70 miles an hour. Great turning radius because we got 7.5 degrees of rear steer. Still getting all the noise. If you notice, it wanders just a little bit. Now we're just in normal mode, which I believe gives a little bit less power, but not by a lot. It's certainly plenty of torque. If we get into it a little bit, that's great. And it's not gonna snap your neck. It's not gonna make your passengers vomit. Well, I guess if you did it a lot, it would. But also say hi to Clint from Edmonds, my drive partner today, and he's wonderful. And yeah, it's always good when you've got a good buddy on one of these trips because we are going for a little drive through Michigan today.
It's a big drive through Michigan today.
It is. First thing I'm noticing, I've got the one pedal driving on, but it's in normal mode and it's tuned really well. The harsh mode, the higher mode, is too much. It's too much for me, and that's when I kind of start sending myself through the windscreen. This is tailored really nicely. You've got to give it a little bit of pedal to get it off the line, so it's not super stabby or sensitive or spiky when you get into it, which is nice. I've got my heads-up display giving me all kinds of pertinent information. Actually, a lot of information. I've got speed, direction, cruise control, we have a few different modes for our new dashboard layout, which this reminds me a lot of the Chevy Colorado. Sierra and Silverado haven't really gotten this yet, but what I do like is that you get the map. Don't necessarily need it because you've got a giant map over here, but if you do want it directly in front of you, you have that ability. This is where torque comes in handy because I can make this move without blocking traffic. I think this might be new for this truck. I could be wrong, but the regen paddle is not just a click. It actually is pressure dependent. So I can, ooh, yeah, I can change how much regen I get out of this. That's not something I've ever felt in a Chevy vehicle before. A little bit of tire noise, even at this speed. So that weight is definitely being seen in the handling dynamics when it comes to rubber on the road. Now, I'll have to look into these tires a little bit because sometimes what happens is for increased range and decreased rolling resistance, we end up with a really hard tire compound, so less of that like sticky black material that you get in a slick or something. But the sacrifice, of course, is handling grip. So if you lose that handling grip for the sake of rolling resistance, well, then you're going to have a harder time getting around a corner. Now, it's interesting. You can really feel the rear steer in this when you kind of toss it side to side. We've got a little more body roll in the touring mode than we would in the sport mode, but well controlled. I think it's doing a good job with its weight. I think it's just interesting because we're dealing with a very similar type of vehicle to the Hummer EV. We'll push from the front. Just gotta find out where that's coming out. I don't get a whole lot of feedback from the steering. Of course, it's not like this nice hydraulic direct link that you would get in an old school truck or something like that, but I can tell what's going on. So I'm not afraid to push it through a corner. It's just the limits are lower than you might expect because it's gonna be a little lower than you would get on your regular ICE Silverado or GMC Sierra. How are you feeling about these seats?
The heaters work well, I'll tell you that. I've been ripping this seat heater for like the last 2 hours and I am cooking right now.
It's insane. I would be sweating if I were you. I'm going to put my cooled seats on. I like this.
Anytime I go to the Midwest, there's immediate seat heating action.
They're wide,
bad.
You know?
On Chevy products, sometimes I feel like the headrests come far a little bit forward.
Sure.
So that your head only hits the very, very top of it, which I always find strange, but they're not bad.
Yeah, I think they're wide. They're definitely built for like a larger individual than I, which is good because that's probably what this truck is, you know, going to go home to. But still reasonable side bolstering. It's going to hold you in around a corner. You're not going to be sitting on a flat bench couch.
Back seat is where it's at. You can stretch your legs.
Yeah. And, you know, we've been in the truck for a while now, and I think a complaint that I had in some other Chevy vehicles, like the Bolt, I remember that the seat of the Bolt, like the bottom part, felt really hard. And this is like nice and cushy, which is doing two things. It's absorbing some of the imperfections of the road, but it's also making it so my skinny butt isn't, you know, just going numb. Probably do a pretty long road trip, and if you're going to give me this kind of range, it's like a dare to just sit in it for 440 miles. Can slow down with the one pedal. having to add just a little more steering input than feels natural. So you kind of get into that corner and realize, oh, I just got to add a little more. Oh, we've got a beaver, or woodchuck. Let's not hit him.
Stay there.
But it handles predictably. I think it's just managing weight, and that's always going to be a situation with these trucks.
To me, this is a pretty apparent case of the tires are giving up before the chassis.
100%. And I wonder what happens when you put a stickier, more capable tire on it, if it's possible, because you may need this like outrageous sidewall strength in order to deal with this. Maybe it's a function of the size of the wheel that we're putting on this, but if you were to give it a little more grip, I'm sure we would waste through rubber because it would be softer, but it may handle a little better.
It would eat tires so quickly.
So there's that wander. And part of it is like if you add any steering input, it kind of just starts following that. That sounds weird. How do I describe this? It's following the steering input in a way that's like, it's kind of like luring me toward it, and I have to make those corrections. So it's an interesting feel when you're on acceleration. And if you get in one of these trucks right off the get and you floor it and you say that doesn't feel that fast, it's because it's definitely not as fast when you're not in the wow mode. You've got to hit that Batman button, and that's going to give you the extra power, which I don't love. I think wide open throttle should always be wide open throttle. I'm not a huge fan of party tricks when it comes to launch controls or things like that. So I feel like just having all of it available is better, but I understand maybe just for battery management, heat management, all this other stuff, they don't want you necessarily sitting in that all the time. Or it's a safety feature where they're just like, well, most people don't need to go that fast, so only if you're in the know, you get the red Hellcat key kind of thing, and that's where you're enabling it. So I think that's going to do it on my first driving impressions of the new Chevrolet Silverado EV RST. I think it accomplishes what it set out to do. It's a proper truck that does truck things. It has an outrageous range that is definitely going to catch the eye of everybody in the EV market. 440 miles is no joke, whether you're looking at a Tesla or a Lucid or a Rivian. This is like the real deal. You might not even be a Chevy or GM loyalist, or you may have never bought one before, but this might be the entry level for you. This might bring you in the door because of its capability. It'll tow 10,000 pounds, 1,500 pounds of payload, and plenty of power. It's a comfortable place to be. It's not a sports car, and it's not supposed to be. So, of course, it's not going to handle wildly around a corner, but it should be noted that it's not going to handle wildly around a corner just because it seems tire limited. I think the chassis is pretty strong. It's got a low center of gravity, so there's not a sensation that this is going to tip. Air suspension, mwah, beautiful. I love that it has actual differences between drive modes, from soft to firm. You can adjust the truck in your Chevy My mode accordingly. The downside of this, I think, is that the work truck gets a much smaller wheel with a taller sidewall tire. I think this truck could do with that, and I know that aesthetically it's maybe not as pleasing, and this appearance is going to get people in the door, but unfortunately I don't know that it has the practical application of being as smooth and capable. It's really preemptively telling me that I need to brake. It just buzzed my seat, and I'm like, we're in no danger of hitting that Honda. Congratulations to Chevrolet. I think this is a really good step to bringing some people into the electrified market, and I'm thrilled that they are not abandoning ICE vehicles. You can get both. So don't take this as some offensive stance on engines or batteries. No, this is just an option, and if it's for you, go for it. So thank you so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one. And I think that is going to be the new GM headquarters with the crane on it. So we are appropriately finishing this right near the new headquarters of General Motors. I'm doing that all on the regen paddle, and I'm just pulling it harder and harder. And it brought me to a stop. Pretty cool.